guys, Nikki here. I'm here today to do my spoiler review for Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. It is the second book in the Harry Potter series, as most of you likely know. It is your return to Hogwarts with Harry. Shit starts going down, and more importantly, we get introduced to Dobby, who is one of my faves. So I'm gonna start with my likes and dislikes. It's all I'm really gonna say in summary of the book. My first like is all of the Ron love that we get throughout the story. I really love the exposure to his family ties, the little bit of loyalty and bravery we see, and just his general understanding of how to be a friend, I guess. There's a lot of situations, especially when Harry sees Floo powder for the first time, when Ron's response isn't like, what do you mean you don't know about Floo powder? It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Harry. I should have realized that you wouldn't know what this is. And I loved all that attention that Ron got this book. He really isn't like the best or my favorite character through most of the series, but given that he's part of the main three, I really enjoyed getting that exposure to him really early on. I think it established his character pretty well. My other like is Lockhart. I don't know what it is about him that's it's highly entertaining. I love how smarmy he is, how focused and driven he is to get fame. But then the weird suggestions he gives Harry for being, oh, this is how you deal with being famous. This is what you should do. Oh, don't go doing that yet, Harry. I don't think you're experienced enough for this. He was so incompetent and so silly. I understand why he would have been frustrating to the characters in the book, but I loved every time I got to talk to him because it was lighthearted comedy that didn't come from Fred and George, so I found it kind of refreshing. Even though I love Fred and George, it was just nice to get that extra source of it, and I think that's why Lockhart was such a big thing for me. And then my third like is the expansion of the world. Specifically in social norms and what would be considered politically correct speech. You get a lot of interactions with Malfoy towards Hermione, and my favorite, which I can't believe I forgot about until I read it again, was the fist fight between Lucius Malfoy and Arthur Weasley. I completely forgot that they legitimately went to punches in a bookstore. And it ended up being my favorite part of the book, I think. It did such a good job of fleshing out what kind of people they are, what kind of relationship they hold, and a lot of what their political views and ideologies are. And I really liked how well it fleshed out a lot of characters so you really knew where they stood. That's all I really have to say for my likes. I could go on forever, but really, that's not what we're here for. We're here for a review, not for me to nostalgically list everything I loved about the book. And so I'll move to my dislikes. My biggest dislike with the second book was how formulaic it was compared to the first one, because it followed it pretty closely. The Dursleys are terrible and abusive. Harry meets Ron, and Harry and Ron took a flying car. So yes, granted, that is different. This being said, weird things during the Sorting Hat ceremony, kind of things that are mentioned. And then weird shit starts happening. It leads the main characters to go down a large slide into a dark room in the sub-basement, subfloors of the school. That sounds familiar. And in these chambers, you find the big bad, who is typically Voldy in a really weak form and something else that's more powerful. Shocker! And while I think overall this typically isn't bad because it's going to be really easy and really accessible to follow a similar formula, the fact that it was so similar to the first book is a lot more off-putting as an adult than it was as a kid. My second negative is that parts don't really make sense. My big issue here is how the snake was moving through the school. Oh, it's moving through the pipes. So it's how big are these pipes? And when they were putting these pipes in to get indoor plumbing, how did they not find the Chamber of Secrets? Because it's a pretty decent sized room and the snake is pretty big, but all the way back to the ancient Egyptians had some form of indoor plumbing, even though it was very primitive compared to what we'd use now. It's like, how did that never get found when they were putting indoor plumbing in? And that just, I had some real problems with that reading through, and I don't know why I got so stuck on it, but I did. And that leads me to my third negative, which again is the pacing. As I explained in my spoiler-free video, the big thing with the pacing is that we spend so much time not at the school that once we get to the school, everything that happens there leading up to the end, I always find feels really rushed. And it's nice that, yes, the book picks up the pace after the halfway mark. It's just, there's certain things I would have like expanded upon, and there just wasn't room for it with how much of the book was left. Yeah, it's just the one issue that I had with the writing overall, because despite that, it was really accessible and the characters were really well done, and the plot was, well, formulaic, like it was well written. And with that, I'll move on to my characters. So with the characters, I really liked that so much of their interactions really helped define the characters themselves. Like I had mentioned in my likes, Arthur Weasley and Lucius Malfoy coming to punches, and there's like interactions between Malfoy and Ron, and Malfoy and Hermione, and Malfoy and Harry, and then the interactions between the main three and like the other people in the house with them, in their classes with them. I loved Gilderoy Lockhart. He was a really interesting choice as Defense Against the Dark Arts, especially since I'm pretty sure Dumbledore knew a little bit what was up with him, but was like, how much harm could he do? And it's like, well, he didn't really do that much harm, but enough shit went down that he wasn't helpful. I mentioned Dobby in my summary kind of introduction, and I have to say, I love Dobby. This is such a unique way to introduce a character, and part of it is because of the kind of role that Dobby holds as a house elf in Wizarding Society. You empathize, or you sympathize with him so much that I just ended up getting like really attached, and I loved that the way he was written. You knew he was going to come back as a friend of Harry, but I really enjoy the fact that you end on such a high note with him getting free and out from under the boot heel of Lucius Malfoy and his family. I also liked that you got a little bit of a dive into Hagrid's history and like why he is where he is. And again, this is like my likes. I could go on about the characters in this book forever, but I'm going to stop here. You didn't come here to see me rant and rave about this book. So I'll move on to my wrap up. My score for this book is a 3 out of 5 stars. As I've mentioned previously, this is probably one of my least favorite books in the series. It's not bad, it's just not as, I didn't like it as much as the others. The big reason is just how formulaic it was, how some parts just kind of defied my logic personally when I was reading it. And it's not like it was too terrible, because you did get a lot of exposure to Ron and a lot of development with Ron, and I loved that. As well as just like Dobby and Lockhart and the information you got about Hagrid, and it kind of like fleshed out his background a little bit. But despite how much I didn't care for it, the book was really well written and accessible for a wide audience, as was the first one, and it was just a quick and easy read because the page number was pretty limited, which you don't get with later volumes. It was easy read, easy to get through, and that's really all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any comments, leave them below. I will get to them as soon as I can, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!